coastal wetland restorations in North Queensland. And then we're going to have Ben Brown, who is here from Charles Darwin University, talking about mangrove restoration, but in Indonesia. And then we'll have Melissa Wortman phoning in from Deakin University, giving us some information about large-scale salt marsh restoration in Victoria. And then lastly, myself talking about coastal wetland prioritisation and opportunities for mangrove and salt marsh and other coastal wetland restoration, again in North Queensland. So as we know, coastal wetlands have a variety of values. They're highly valued for a range of reasons, which we term ecosystem services. Not only do they provide habitat for a range of aquatic and terrestrial and marine biodiversity, but they also support human livelihoods by the myriad of ecosystem services that they provide. So they're great for sustaining coastal fisheries and fish catches. They're also good for improving water quality, both through trapping sediments, but also through filtering out nutrients through a variety of biogeochemical processes. They're great at doing nutrient cycling and also protecting our coasts from storms and high energy waves, winds, and that's why they're proposed in so many blue carbon initiatives now to adapt to climate change with the predictions with increased sea level rise and storms with climate change. But also they've been noticed for their significant capacity to store carbon, both in their biomass and in their sediments, which is termed blue carbon. And so they're also been highlighted in blue carbon initiatives to undertake that climate change mitigation role. But unfortunately, like most ecosystems, they've been largely degraded and lost across the world. And this is because of all the human activities in the coastal zone. Of course, we all love to live by the sea, and so urban development has resulted in the loss of coastal wetlands, but also significantly because of agriculture, there's been a great loss of wetlands. So in Australia, that's predominantly because of agriculture, like cropping and grazing, but in other countries like Southeast Asia, but also in South America, it's because of these big aquaculture ponds, and you can see some photos there encroaching into those coastal wetlands. And that's a photo there of where, because of grazing, they've constructed a bun wall, which has allowed grazing and cropping to occur lower in the intertidal zone by facilitating that drainage. So given we've got these really big losses of coastal wetlands occurring, there's some ambitious targets to bring back wetlands. And most of these targets are aimed at mitigating climate change through sequestering carbon. But also these targets aim to reverse the loss of biodiversity and improve human livelihoods as well. So it all started with the Convention of Biological Diversity and their Aikiki biodiversity target, which was to restore 15% of degraded lands. And then we had the Bond Challenge to restore 350 million hectares of degraded land. And that, of course, led into the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, of which coastal wetlands fall under 2 of them, 14 and 13. And then we've got these big targets from the UN Decade of Restoration for ecosystem restoration, but also the Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And then there's the Global Mangrove Alliance, which the others will talk more about, which was formed to respond to this loss of mangroves. And then we've got national targets as well. So Ben will talk more about Indonesia's targets. And Australia recently announced this $100 million to restore Australia's ocean coast, which blue carbon restoration forms some of that money. So just going through this quickly. So climate change mitigation is an incentive for coastal wetland restoration. So when you've got intact, this is for mangroves, when you've got intact mangroves, they're a net greenhouse gas sink, but because of human activities, they get degraded. They emit CO2, but also other potent greenhouse gases like methane and nitrous oxide, which have got large global warming potentials. But when you restore them, that all gets restored and it goes back to being a CO2 sink, and you avoid greenhouse gas emissions as well. So the purpose of this session is really to enhance landscape scale restoration of coastal wetlands so Catherine will identify the benefits of mangrove restoration for local communities, building an investment case. Nathan will learn from the success of different past wetland restorations to inform future decision making. Ben will identify mangrove forest landscape restoration opportunity, considering social, economic and policy factors. And Melissa will tell us about how we can work with a range of stakeholders to undertake large-scale salt marsh restoration. And lastly, I'll have a look at what the opportunity for restoration of agricultural land is using the wet tropics as a case study and what the economic feasibility of doing that under a blue carbon market is. So thanks, and Kath.